Hey friends. Tonight we're diving into something quiet, cold, and just a little strange. This is boring history for sleep, life as a medieval assassin, because nothing says sweet dreams like candlelit monasteries, suspicious monks, and the occasional secret mission under a full moon. You're not a hero. You're not a knight. You're just a very tired monk with a second job no one's supposed to know about. So before you tuck in, go ahead and tap like and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy these sleepy deep dives into the weirdest corners of history. No pressure. No algorithm worship. Just bedtime vibes. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing this little sleepy community stretch across time zones and bedrooms around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan or some gentle rain noise in the background. Take a deep breath. And let's ease into tonight's journey. One creaky floorboard, one flickering candle, and one extremely boring medieval assassin at a time. You wake up in the dark. Again. No alarm clock, no sunlight. Just cold air, a stiff blanket, and the distant sound of silence. Welcome to another morning in your very exciting life, as a monk. Well, kind of. We'll get to the other parts soon. Your bed is nothing fancy. A thin straw mattress on a wooden frame. It creaks when you move, and the straw pokes you through the sheet, like it's got a personal grudge. The blanket is wool, itchy, and slightly damp. Not because someone spilled something, but because this room is slightly damp. Always. You sit up slowly. It's still dark outside, of course. The sun won't rise for another hour or so. But here, in this old stone monastery, the day starts early. Like before birds think about chirping early. You rub your eyes, stretch, and yawn. Your breath fogs in the cold air. The candle beside your bed has already burned halfway down. You lit it the night before, knowing you'd need it again come morning. That's the thing about candles. They're your version of a light switch, but you have to remember to manage the wax budget. You pull on your robe. Scratch your wool again, because comfort is for nobles and daydreamers. The robe smells like smoke and old lavender, probably from the herbs someone burned in the hallway last week. The smell sort of lingers. A lot of things linger around here: cold, dust, secrets. Your chamber is small. One bed. One candle. One wooden stool. And a shelf with exactly 3 things on it: a cup, a wooden comb, and a worn copy of Psalms written in Latin. You don't even really speak Latin, but you pretend to when others are around. Everyone does. It's kind of like mumbling through a song at church and hoping nobody notices. You open the old wooden door. It groans a little, like it also doesn't want to be awake yet. Out in the hallway, the stone floor is even colder. You tiptoe, because you're not trying to wake Brother Elric, whose room is just down the corridor. That man snores like a broken bellows. He deserves his rest. You make your way to the wash basin. Cold water. Always cold. You splash your face. It helps a little. Not much. Then you dry off with a rough linen towel that's somehow both damp and stiff. Magic. Time for prayers. You head to the chapel. It's quiet. The others will be here soon, but right now it's just you and the flicker of candlelight bouncing off stone walls. The chapel always smells of beeswax and old wood. It's peaceful in a heavy kind of way. Like the building itself is trying to remember something. You kneel on the bench. You say your morning prayer. Nothing dramatic, just the usual words. You've said them so many times they come out half asleep. Lord, grant me the strength to walk in your path, the patience to hear your will, and the silence to know when to speak none of it aloud. That last part? That's your own little addition. You always add it. No one's noticed yet. Or if they have, they're smart enough not to mention it. After prayers, you head to the refectory. That's a fancy word for the place where breakfast happens. Except breakfast here is, well, let's just say no one's writing a cookbook. You sit on a wooden bench. A loaf of dark bread gets passed around. You tear off a piece. It's chewy and dry and tastes like it resents being eaten. You dip it in a bit of thin broth. The broth is warm, which is the nicest thing you can say about it. You eat in silence. That's the rule. No talking during meals. Which is honestly fine, because no one's in the mood to chat at this hour anyway. You glance around. Everyone looks the same. Robes, tired faces, eyes half shut. Just a bunch of quiet monks eating cold bread in a cold room. Nothing suspicious here. But here's the thing. You're not just a monk. Sure, you walk like one. You chant the psalms. You copy old texts in the scriptorium. You sweep the floors. You grow herbs in the garden. But when the sun goes down and the halls grow quiet, sometimes you do other things. You've slipped out of this monastery in the dead of night, wearing different clothes. You've walked dusty roads alone, passed through cities under a different name. You've delivered messages to people you weren't supposed to know. You've listened in on secrets behind church doors. You've hidden in shadows so thick even the moon couldn't find you. You're part of something else. An order within the order. A quiet group. No official name. No flashy symbols. No dramatic oaths shouted over torches. Just a look. A signal. A piece of parchment tucked into a book that suddenly disappears the next day. Your work doesn't involve swords. Not often. It involves patience. Listening. Knowing when to move and when to vanish. And here, back in this monastery, among these quiet brothers, this is where you rest. This is your cover. Your calm. Your silence. Sometimes, you almost forget the other part of your life exists. The sneaking. The observing. The whispering messages no one else hears. But it always comes back. A knock on your door after sunset. A scroll left in your shoe. A name spoken quietly by someone who doesn't meet your eyes. For now, though, you're just here. Eating bread. Sipping broth. Pretending to be sleepy like the rest. Outside, the sky is just beginning to lighten. You can hear the crows starting to stir in the trees. Another day is beginning. Another perfectly boring day in a very old monastery. You finish your breakfast. Wipe your hands on your robe. You nod politely to Brother Ulrich, who looks like he's already halfway back to sleep. Then you stand. You stretch. You walk slowly toward the scriptorium, where you'll spend the next few hours copying letters with a quill that squeaks every time you use it. And that's okay. Because for now, you're just another monk in a cold stone room. And nobody knows the rest. Except you. And maybe the person who lit that candle before you even woke up. You learned to write invisible messages using crushed berries and lemon juice. You practiced walking blindfolded through the monastery's tunnels. You memorized the names of every noble family in 3 counties. Not because you hated them, just because information is a powerful thing. The most important lesson? Patience. You learn how to wait. Not for minutes. Not for hours. But for days. Weeks. You once waited 2 whole days behind a hay cart, just to see who walked into a bakery in the early morning. That guy never showed. But the bread smelled great. You learned to be invisible. Not with magic or cloaks. Just with stillness. With silence. With practice. No one notices a monk sweeping a floor. No one questions the guy refilling ink in the scriptorium. That's the secret. You don't hide in shadows. You become the shadow in plain sight. Over time, you stop thinking of it as a double life. It was just life. Prayer in the morning, shadow work by night. Herbal poultices by day, coded letters by candlelight. There were others like you, of course. You weren't the only one. But you didn't know their names. You recognized each other by a gesture, a phrase, a look. You could sit across from one of them at dinner and never exchange a word. But you both know. You're part of a quiet network. Not a brotherhood with fancy rings or matching tattoos. Just people in the right place, at the right time, with the right skills. You're not heroes. You're not villains either. You're balance. That's what the old monk called it. The one who first trained you. We tilt the scales, boy. Just a little. Just enough to keep the wrong people from getting too comfortable. You didn't fully understand it at the time. Honestly, you were still trying to figure out how to walk without tripping over your own robe. But it stuck with you. You don't assassinate for fun, or fame, or gold. Monasteries don't really do bonuses. You do it because sometimes, quietly, something needs to be done, and no one else will do it. Sometimes it's as small as slipping a message under a merchant's door. Sometimes it's warning a village elder that soldiers are coming. And yes, sometimes it means removing someone whose cruelty has gone too far. Someone no one else can touch. But never with anger. Never with chaos. Always with purpose. Always with silence. That's why most of your days still look boring. You spend hours copying texts. You tend to the herb garden. You mend torn robes. You make tea for Brother Arnulf when his cough flares up. You even fix the door hinges in the guest quarters when they squeak too loudly. And at night, if the bell rings a certain number of times, or a candle is left burning in a window that's usually dark, then you know. You prepare. You pack light, a cloak, a small blade, a flask of oil, a pouch of dried herbs. You leave through a side gate. You walk until your boots are muddy and the stars start to fade. Then you do what must be done. Most people think being an assassin means blood. But honestly, most of it is waiting, watching, noticing when someone lies, remembering who stood next to whom at the feast, listening when everyone else is laughing. Most of it is just being quiet enough, long enough, to hear the part nobody says out loud. That's the life you've chosen. Or maybe it chose you. It's strange sometimes. You kneel for evening prayers next to a brother who thinks you're just the guy who fixes the garden fence. He has no idea you crossed 3 villages last week carrying a sealed letter that may have changed the fate of a whole town. And honestly, that's how it's supposed to be. Because in this life, you don't seek credit, or attention, or even thanks. You seek balance, and silence, and sleep, if you're lucky. Which, speaking of, it's getting late. You'll need to be up again before dawn. Might as well get what rest you can. The candles burn low again. You blow it out. The room falls into darkness. And just like that, you disappear again. Blending in with the world. Being a shadow is one thing inside a monastery. It's quiet, structured. Everyone follows the same routine, wears the same robes, eats the same chewy bread. It's like living inside a very cold, very polite beehive. But the real challenge? Going out into the world. Blending in with people who aren't trained to ignore you. You can't walk into a town looking like a mysterious robed figure with a serious face and a dramatic breeze behind you. That gets attention. And attention is the enemy. So when you leave the monastery, you become someone else. Maybe you're a traveling herbalist. You've got a satchel full of dried rosemary and mint, and a bunch of vague stories about healing in the mountains. People trust herbalists. They talk to them. Sometimes they offer free soup. Or maybe you're a wandering pilgrim. You wear a wooden cross around your neck, look tired, and speak just enough Latin to sound holy, but not so much that anyone asks follow-up questions. Sometimes you're a tinker, offering to fix broken spoons and pans for a few coins. Most people don't even look at you twice. That's the goal. You're not here to stand out. You're here to vanish into the noise. The secret? Small talk. You learn the rhythms of gossip. The things people say when they think no one's really listening. Who married who? Who's been sneaking out after curfew? Who's upset with the local lord because he raised the bread tax again? You don't even need to ask. Just sit by the well. Smile. Look tired and harmless. People love talking around strangers, as long as those strangers seem like they're just passing through. Of course, you don't write any of it down. That would be suspicious. Instead, you memorize everything. Names, places, habits. You've got a mind like a basket, wide at the top, tight at the bottom. Nothing important falls through. Blending in with the world. Being a shadow is one thing inside a monastery. It's quiet, structured. Everyone follows the same routine, wears the same robes, eats the same chewy bread. It's like living inside a very cold, very polite beehive. But the real challenge? Going out into the world. Blending in with people who aren't trained to ignore you. You can't walk into a town looking like a mysterious robed figure with a serious face and a dramatic breeze behind you. That gets attention. And attention is the enemy. So when you leave the monastery, you become someone else. Maybe you're a traveling herbalist. You've got a satchel full of dried rosemary and mint, and a bunch of vague stories about healing in the mountains. People trust herbalists. They talk to them. Sometimes they offer free soup. Or maybe you're a wandering pilgrim. You wear a wooden cross around your neck, look tired, and speak just enough Latin to sound holy, but not so much that anyone asks follow-up questions. Sometimes you're a tinker, offering to fix broken spoons and pans for a few coins. Most people don't even look at you twice. That's the goal. You're not here to stand out. You're here to vanish into the noise. The secret? Small talk. You learn the rhythms of gossip. The things people say when they think no one's really listening. Who married who? Who's been sneaking out after curfew? Who's upset with the local lord because he raised the bread tax again? You don't even need to ask. Just sit by the well. Smile. Look tired and harmless. People love talking around strangers, as long as those strangers seem like they're just passing through. Of course, you don't write any of it down. That would be suspicious. Instead, you memorize everything. Names, places, habits. You've got a mind like a basket, wide at the top, tight at the bottom. Nothing important falls through. Sometimes you visit markets. Markets are noisy, messy, and full of life. You walk through them like a ghost, letting the crowd carry you. Chickens squawk, vendors shout, someone's arguing over a fish that definitely smells funny. You love it all. Because here you're invisible. No one notices a quiet man looking at cabbages. No one suspects the guy asking about honey prices is actually watching the guards on the far side of the square. Or that he's counting how many exits there are in the alley behind the candlemaker's shop. You blend in with the smells of baked bread and sheep dung, the clatter of hooves on cobblestones, the sound of children laughing and running past. You're just part of the noise. And if someone does talk to you, maybe a shopkeeper trying to sell you pickled onions, you nod, smile, and mumble something about stomach troubles. Works every time. You've even got a few backup identities. There's the quiet pilgrim from Saxony, the slightly deaf stonemason, the beekeeper's apprentice who's just passing through. You keep your lies simple, easy to remember, easy to let go of. The trick is never being interesting. No one remembers boring. You make yourself forgettable, like a rock by the road or a half-eaten roll on a table. People see you, but they don't register you. Even your clothes help. Nothing flashy. Just travel-worn tunics, a wool cloak, sometimes a floppy hat. You walk like your feet hurt. Like you've slept in too many barns. Like you're tired of the world, and it's tired of you. Very relatable. You've passed through dozens of villages like this. Sometimes you stay a night, sometimes a week. Long enough to listen. Never long enough to be noticed. In one town, you helped a shepherd fix his fence. In another, you listened to a baker complain about his cousin the tax collector. In yet another, you spent 2 days pretending to be a mute just to avoid a very chatty innkeeper. You're like a stone skipping across water. Just a brief ripple. And then gone. There are rules, of course. Don't drink too much. Don't flirt. Don't get involved in local disputes. And definitely don't get attached. You're not here to make friends. You're here to observe. Well, except maybe that one time. That candlemaker's daughter in Harrowfield. She had a laugh like spring rain and a suspiciously good memory. You left at dawn, before she could ask your name again. You keep moving. That's part of the life. Sometimes you get a message. A carved symbol left in the bark of a tree. A folded scrap of linen in the hem of your cloak. A monk with a limp who hands you a cup of tea and touches his nose twice. Your signal to go east. And off you go again. You don't ask questions. You don't need to know the big picture. You're not a hero in a song. You're not part of a noble rebellion. You're just a very quiet person with a very specific set of responsibilities. And honestly, that's enough. When the sun sets, and you've found a quiet place to sleep, maybe a hayloft or a cave near a stream, you light a small fire, drink a little water, and listen to the night. You think about the things you heard that day. A name. A direction. A whisper behind a curtain. You piece it together slowly. Like a puzzle only you can see. And when morning comes, you walk on. A little slower. A little quieter. Always moving. Always watching. Because in this life, blending in is not just a skill. It's survival. Let's talk gear. Not swords and crossbows and dramatic cloaks flapping in the wind. That's for knights and traveling poets. You're something else. Your tools are smaller. Simpler. Smarter. The kind of things that fit into a satchel without making noise. The kind of tools that, at first glance, just make you look like a slightly weird herbalist or an overly prepared monk. Let's take inventory. First up, the blades. You have two. Not big ones. No gleaming steel. Just a small knife you use to cut rope, fruit, or occasionally, and very carefully, things that aren't rope or fruit. It's simple, with a worn leather grip. No decoration. It doesn't need to impress anyone. It just needs to work. The other one is even smaller. A hidden blade, barely longer than your thumb. It lives tucked into your boot. You haven't used it in 3 years. Hopefully, you won't need to anytime soon. But it's there. Like a secret you carry at your ankle. Next, the vials. Little glass bottles, no bigger than your thumb. They clink softly in a padded pouch. You've got a calming tincture made from valerian root, good for nerves, or for helping someone sleep just a little too well. A drop in wine is all it takes. Then there's the bitter one made from crushed herbs and fermented bark. It won't kill you, but it'll send you running to the latrine like your soul's trying to escape through your stomach. Sometimes, that's just what you need to clear a room fast. You've also got a pale blue powder. You don't use that one. You just carry it. Because someone told you to. And because someone once used it on the wrong person and they still haven't finished telling the story, which is always a bad sign. Moving on, wax seals and scrolls. This is where the real magic happens, not the wizard kind, but the quiet monk with a pen kind. You've got parchment folded tighter than a miser's fist. Tiny messages in even tinier handwriting. Sometimes they're just names. Sometimes a symbol. Once, just the word. Turnip. That one kept you up all night. You've got a handful of blank seals too, little discs of wax you can warm with a candle and press with a carved ring. You've memorized 6 noble seals by sight. You can fake 4 of them well enough to fool a sleepy guard or an overworked clerk. You've also got a needle and thread. Not for sewing tunics. Well, sometimes for tunics. But more often to sew a message into a hem. Or to fix your own gear after crawling under a fence for 5 hours. Being a quiet professional doesn't mean you don't tear your pants. There's a folded map in your pouch. It's hand-drawn, a little smudged, and very, very wrong in places, on purpose. You've marked paths only you understand. A crooked line means safe house. A star means a secret tunnel. A smudge that looks like a chicken means don't trust the baker. Long story. You carry string. A small coil of wax twine. Sounds boring, right? But it's saved your life more times than anything else. You've used it to tie shut a bag of silver, trip a drunk soldier in the dark, and measure exactly how far the garden wall is from the candlemaker's roof. There's charcoal, too. You can write a message on stone, on bark, on the side of a cart if no one's looking. You can mark where you've been, or where someone should turn left instead of right. And it doubles as emergency eyeliner if you ever need to look extra dramatic. You haven't used it for that. Yet. Oh, and let's not forget bread. Always bring bread. Not because it's exciting. Because it's expected. People trust travelers with food. Especially the kind that looks like it was baked a week ago, and could be used as a weapon in a pinch. You break it in half, offer it to a stranger, and suddenly you're just a tired pilgrim again. You carry all of this in a satchel made of thick canvas. It's patched in 3 places and smells faintly of mint and ink. It blends in. Nobody thinks twice about a tired monk with a bag. And that's the point. Every item you carry has a reason, a purpose. Nothing flashy, nothing heavy. Just things that let you move quietly, think clearly, and leave no trace behind. You're not trying to start fights. You're trying to avoid them. Most of your missions, if you even call them that, don't involve violence. They involve slipping into a place, watching a thing, maybe changing one small detail. A name in a ledger. A date on a scroll. A bottle switched for another that looks exactly the same. It's not glamorous. It's not loud. It's slow. Careful. Boring, even. But that's what keeps you alive. That's what keeps others alive, too. Sometimes you pack a piece of paper with your own name on it. Not your real one. Not the name you were born with. The one the order gave you. The one you'd whisper in the dark if someone ever asked who you really are. No one ever does. And that's okay. Because the tools you carry aren't just objects. They're reminders. Of what you do. Of why you do it. And of how far a quiet person can go if they pack well and say nothing. The art of listening. You've probably heard people say, "He's got ears like a hawk." That doesn't really make sense. Hawks don't have great ears. But you know what they're trying to say. In your line of work, hearing matters more than seeing. Anyone can spot a secret door or a suspicious scroll. But hearing what's said when people don't think they're being heard? That's where the real work happens. That's where the secrets live. It starts with practice. You've trained your ears the same way a knight trains with a sword, daily, carefully, with a lot of small failures in between. Like mishearing sister as cistern once and following a water barrel for half a day. You learned your lesson. The trick is not just hearing words, but listening between them. You don't just hear, "The Baron's moving men next week." You hear, "He's nervous." You hear the pause before the sentence, the way his voice dips when he says, "Next week." You hear the rustle of a scroll being hidden behind a curtain. You pay attention to silence, too. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than anything else. A servant who suddenly stops humming when a name is mentioned. A merchant who laughs too quickly at a bad joke. A room that goes quiet just 1 second too long after someone walks in. You listen for those moments like a hound listens for a squirrel. Not barking. Just waiting. It helps that people underestimate you. You're just a monk, right? Sitting on a bench, fiddling with some rosary beads, smiling gently at the birds. You're probably too busy thinking about heaven to notice anything useful. That's what they assume. So they speak freely. Right in front of you. In inns, market stalls, church pews. You hear whispers and half-truths and arguments disguised as polite conversation. You learn the rhythm of lies. There's a pattern to them. The way people change the subject too fast. Or over-explain something no one asked about. Or repeat a phrase like they're trying to convince themselves it's true. You've sat by a fire while 2 merchants talked about wool prices, even though either one sells wool. You've smiled while a noblewoman told her friend that she definitely didn't recognize the man who visited her tower after sunset. You don't react. That's the rule. You listen. You nod. You look half asleep. Maybe you even yawn. Inside, you're recording every word. That's why you always carry a little bit of charcoal. Later, when you're alone, you scribble it down, just enough to jog your memory. No names. Just patterns. You're not trying to catch people. This isn't a trap. You're trying to understand how things fit together. Who's angry? Who's scared? Who's about to do something foolish? And then, sometimes, someone speaks directly to you. It might be a whisper at your shoulder. A stable hand who slips you a folded note without looking. A beggar who says something strange, something that doesn't make sense unless you've been trained to hear it. You nod. Just once. That's all it takes. Sometimes the message is urgent. Other times it's a seed, a name you'll hear again weeks later in a town 2 valleys over. You don't always know what it means right away. But you listen. Always. You've picked up other sounds too. Like footsteps. You can tell who's coming by how they walk. Heavy boots? Probably a guard. Light, quick steps? Messenger. Stumbling, unsteady shuffling? Either Brother Elric, or someone who's had a little too much ale at lunch. The birds help too. You've spent so long in quiet places that even the crows have started to make sense. They go silent when someone's sneaking through the orchard. They caw in a strange rhythm when someone moves near the chapel door after dark. You've got your own private choir, and all of them have feathers. Listening also means knowing when not to act. You've heard plans that would never happen. Threats that were just bluster. Secrets that weren't worth the candle wax it would take to write them down. You don't chase every sound. You wait. You sift. You let the wind blow the dust away until only the weighty things remain. That's part of the art, too, being still. You can't listen properly if you're too eager. You sit. You breathe. You let the words come to you. Some nights you lie in bed, eyes closed, just replaying the sounds of the day. The tone of a lord's voice at dinner. The way a guard muttered under his breath when the gate was locked late. The sound of coins being counted in the next room, long after curfew. You gather these moments like breadcrumbs. Small, quiet clues that build a much bigger picture. And sometimes, one of those little crumbs turns out to be gold. A name you heard in one town appears in a letter 2 weeks later. A phrase whispered in a courtyard ends up carved on the inside of a church bell. You connect them. You understand. Not because you saw something flashy. Not because someone told you. But because you listened. You're not the loudest person in the room. You're not even the most important looking. You're just the one who knows the truth before anyone else realizes they've said it. And when the time is right, you act on it. Quietly. Like the wind in the rafters. Your first quiet job. It started with a folded note. You found it tucked between 2 pages of a psalter in the monastery library. Not your psalter. One left on the reading table, where Brother Matthias always forgets his. Or maybe it wasn't Matthias this time. Maybe it was planted. Either way, the note was small. Plain. No signature, no seal. Just a few words written in careful, tiny script. Travel to Wendmere. Find the man with the yellow sash. Wait. Watch. That was it. No dramatic mission. No dagger wrapped in silk. No one standing in the shadows, whispering your destiny. Just a quiet instruction. So you packed your bag. The same one you always bring. Rope. Charcoal. The usual bread. You told the others you were going to gather herbs by the river and left before sunrise. You walked. 2 days across muddy roads and forest trails, through little villages that smelled like cabbage and smoke. You stopped for a night at a barn that creaked when you breathed too hard. The farmer gave you soup and didn't ask your name. When you reached Wendmere, it was raining. Not hard. Just the kind of misty rain that clings to your cloak and makes your socks slowly surrender to dampness. The streets were muddy, the air full of chimney smoke and fish. You didn't rush. That's important. No one trusts someone who arrives in a new town and immediately starts looking for yellow sashes. Instead, you wandered. Sat at the fountain. Bought a small wheel of cheese. Complimented a child's carved wooden toy. Watched the people go about their very regular, very human lives. By afternoon, you spotted him. The sash wasn't bright yellow, more like mustard, really. Faded and frayed at the edges. Tied lazily around his middle like he wasn't even sure why he wore it. He was middle-aged. Thin. Slight limp. Ate his lunch standing in the alley behind the butcher's shop. He looked normal. That was the hard part. You followed from a distance. Not close enough to be noticed, not far enough to lose him. He didn't do anything dramatic. He visited the apothecary. He bought a loaf of bread. He helped a child who dropped a bundle of firewood. For 2 days you watched him. Every movement. Every glance. He slept above the inn, in a room with one candle in the window and a view of the courtyard. You never got close. Until the third night. You sat under the eaves behind the church, pretending to repair your sandals. That's when he approached. No words. He just dropped something beside you. A pouch. Then he walked on. You waited. Watched him vanish into the street. Listened for any sounds of footsteps behind you. Nothing. When you opened the pouch, it held another note and a small silver pin. The note read, "Return home. Report nothing." You listened well. That was it. You just completed your first assignment. And you hadn't done anything. Not really. No danger. No sprinting across rooftops. You just watched. And listened. And waited. That was the test. Could you stay patient? Could you remain unseen? Could you resist the urge to interfere? Turns out, that's harder than it sounds. You walked back the same way you came. The weather was better. The air smelled of pine and something sweet. Wild berries, maybe. You smiled once when you passed a goose that tried to chase you. When you returned to the monastery, no one asked where you'd been. You went straight to the laundry hall. Picked up a basket of robes. Scrubbed them in silence like you'd never left. That night, after prayers, you found a single feather on your bed. Crow feather. Black, glossy. Another sign. A quiet message. You had done well. You kept the feather tucked in your psalter after that. Not to brag or to remember the glory. There wasn't any glory. Just quiet. Just focus. But it meant something. It meant that your training wasn't just theory anymore. You weren't just pretending. You'd done the work. Stayed hidden. Blended in. You were part of the order now. Not fully, not officially. That takes time. Years sometimes. But it was your first real step. The first mission. The first test of the quiet life. And the best part? Nobody else knew. Brother Elric thought you were out gathering mint. Brother Hugo thought you were copying texts in the scriptorium. Even Brother Marcus, who notices everything, just asked if you got caught in the rain. You nodded. Smiled. Said something about slippery hills and goose tracks. Then you returned to your chores, your prayers, your quiet corner in the herb garden. Because that's how the life works. It's not about medals or songs. It's not about epic tales or grand stories. It's about being the one no one remembers. But you'll always remember that first job. Even if it seemed like nothing. Because in your world, nothing is exactly where everything starts. Codes, ciphers, and hidden messages. Words can be dangerous. Not the shouted kind, the whispered kind. The ones scribbled on parchment, slipped under doors, hidden inside other words. As a quiet assassin, you don't deal in violence most of the time. You deal in information. That means you've got to know how to pass messages without anyone realizing a message was ever passed. Which brings us to one of your favorite things, codes. Let's start with something simple, invisible ink. It sounds magical, but it's not. It's lemon juice. Or sometimes onion water, if you're feeling fancy. You dip your quill into the juice and write a message across the page. Looks blank. Totally innocent. Like someone ran out of ideas halfway through a letter. But hold it over a candle flame? Suddenly, the words appear in brownish ghost script. A name. A location. A time. Something that changes everything. But only if you know where to look. Now, not everyone has access to candles. So you use other tricks too. Like acrostics. That's when the first letter of each sentence spells out a hidden word. For example, say you wrote a letter to a noble friend. A friendly update. Very casual. But the first letters of each paragraph? BWARE. You'd be amazed how long it takes people to notice that kind of thing. Most of them are too busy complaining about their sheep or asking when their wine shipment's arriving. Then there are symbol codes. The order taught you a simple one early on. Circles mean danger. Triangles mean meeting. Squares mean. Wait. And half a square? That means someone's watching. You've carved these into tree bark, drawn them in dust, arranged them with stones on a riverbank so they look like a bored traveler left them behind. You've even used flowers. Yes, really? A sprig of rosemary tucked behind a door handle? Message received. A single petal in a bowl of soup? It means the target already left town, or that the soup is terrible. Sometimes both. It's strange sometimes. You kneel for evening prayers next to a brother who thinks you're just the guy who fixes the garden fence. He has no idea you crossed 3 villages last week carrying a sealed letter that may have changed the fate of a whole town. And honestly, that's how it's supposed to be. Because in this life, you don't seek credit, or attention, or even thanks. You seek balance, and silence, and sleep, if you're lucky. Which, speaking of, it's getting late. You'll need to be up again before dawn. Might as well get what rest you can. The candles burn low again. You blow it out. The room falls into darkness. And just like that, you disappear again. Once you brought a basket of apples to a gatekeeper. That was it. Just apples. But he counted them. 7 apples in a basket meant all clear. 6 meant stay hidden. If you ever brought 8, it meant run. Apples are surprisingly powerful when properly organized. Of course, you've made mistakes. Everyone does. Once, you wrote a ciphered message that accidentally said, "Milk the pig," instead of "meet at the mill." That caused a bit of confusion. The recipient showed up with a farmer and a bucket. You both agreed never to speak of it again. Another time, you tried to use flower code in a new village, only to discover that there, rosemary meant your aunt is sick. So the baker's assistant ended up making an awkward trip to the countryside with soup she didn't need to deliver. But you learn. And you adjust. And the next time, you send a proper message, and everything falls into place. You've become fluent in silence. You've trained your hands to move carefully. Your mind to think sideways. Your mouth to say nothing important while your fingers do all the talking. In this world, information is the real weapon. Not swords. Not strength. Just a name, passed from the right hand to the right ear at the right time. And most of the time, no one even knows it happened. They just wonder why the Baron cancelled his trip. Or why the merchant suddenly left town. Or why the gate was locked early that night, and no one can remember who gave the order. But you know. Because you wrote it. Hid it. Passed it. And then vanished into the crowd like smoke. Like always. The garden and the graves. When you're not out walking muddy roads or slipping secret notes behind loose stones, you're here. In the monastery garden. Your cover is simple, you grow herbs. And honestly, you're good at it. You know when the mint likes to be watered. You know how long to dry lavender so it won't crumble in your hand. You even figured out how to keep the snails off the marjoram without shouting at them, which never worked anyway. The garden is quiet. It's fenced off from the rest of the monastery with low stone walls and a gate that creaks even when it's closed. Everything grows in neat rows, some labeled with little wooden markers, some not, because you don't want everyone knowing which ones help you sleep, or wake up faster than you should. You keep your hands busy here. Weeding. Clipping. Mixing compost with a stick that used to be a broom handle in a past life. There's something soothing about dirt under your fingernails. About silence that smells like rosemary and fresh soil. No one suspects the gardener. People assume you're a little odd. Always alone. Always humming quietly. Always with a pouch of crushed thyme in your pocket and a stick of chalk behind your ear. One of the brothers called you Herb Boy once. You didn't correct him. That's fine. That's exactly the kind of name people forget. Just beyond the edge of the garden is the graveyard. It's small. Just a few crooked stones. Some names worn away by wind and rain. Others still sharp, like they were carved yesterday. And a few unmarked ones, just little mounds with a cross pressed into the soil. It's peaceful here, too. In a slightly colder way. You visit often. Not because you're overly dramatic or looking for ghostly guidance. You're just watching, listening. Sometimes the graveyard is where meetings happen. It's never crowded. No one bothers a monk praying among the dead. And no one thinks twice if you kneel too long at a grave that doesn't have your name on it. A handful of the stones are marked with subtle signs, chisel notches that aren't part of the original name. A circle near the bottom. A tiny square in the corner. You know what they mean. You leave messages here too. A folded scrap of parchment inside a hollowed-out stone. A small vial buried at the base of the third marker from the right. Once, you left a note tucked inside a bird's nest someone had carefully built on the shoulder of a statue. No one disturbed it. Birds are trusted that way. Sometimes, you sit on the bench by the yew tree and just wait. You let the wind move through the branches. You watch the way the shadows stretch across the stones. You pay attention to whether the gate has been oiled recently, or whether there are new footprints in the gravel path, ones that don't match any shoes in the monastery. This is where things feel both alive and not. Plants growing. Bees drifting lazily from flower to flower. While just a few steps away, silence sleeps underground. You find it comforting, in a strange way. The plants remind you of what can grow. The stones remind you of what happens when people stop paying attention. And in between there's you. A gardener. A watcher. A shadow with dirt on your robe and rosemary in your pocket. One time, you found a ribbon tied around a gravestone. Simple. Black. Tucked into the side where most people wouldn't see it. That was a message. It meant, he's here. You waited 3 nights. Sat by the mint patch during the day, drank tea made from fennel and sage, kept your ears open. On the 4th night, someone knocked once on the gate. You followed. No questions asked? The garden and the graves are your rhythm. A way to ground yourself after long travels and strange assignments. The dirt brings you back to center. The wind in the trees reminds you that things are still moving. Even here. A handful of the stones are marked with subtle signs, chisel notches that aren't part of the original name. A circle near the bottom. A tiny square in the corner. You know what they mean. You leave messages here too. A folded scrap of parchment inside a hollowed-out stone. A small vial buried at the base of the third marker from the right. Once, you left a note tucked inside a bird's nest someone had carefully built on the shoulder of a statue. No one disturbed it. Birds are trusted that way. Sometimes, you sit on the bench by the yew tree and just wait. You let the wind move through the branches. You watch the way the shadows stretch across the stones. You pay attention to whether the gate has been oiled recently, or whether there are new footprints in the gravel path, ones that don't match any shoes in the monastery. This is where things feel both alive and not. Plants growing. Bees drifting lazily from flower to flower. While just a few steps away, silence sleeps underground. You find it comforting, in a strange way. The plants remind you of what can grow. The stones remind you of what happens when people stop paying attention. And in between there's you. A gardener. A watcher. A shadow with dirt on your robe and rosemary in your pocket. One time, you found a ribbon tied around a gravestone. Simple. Black. Tucked into the side where most people wouldn't see it. That was a message. It meant, he's here. You waited 3 nights. Sat by the mint patch during the day, drank tea made from fennel and sage, kept your ears open. On the 4th night, someone knocked once on the gate. You followed. No questions asked? The garden and the graves are your rhythm. A way to ground yourself after long travels and strange assignments. The dirt brings you back to center. The wind in the trees reminds you that things are still moving. Even here. The Whisper Network. There's no central office. No headquarters with maps and red strings and mysterious voices giving orders through stained glass windows. There's just the Whisper Network. It's not even a real name, to be honest. No one officially calls it that. It's just what you started calling it in your head because it fits. A quiet web of people who pass messages without ever meeting each other's eyes. Who drop notes, move objects, tilt their heads just slightly. and the world shifts. Most of them aren't like you. They don't sneak into places. They don't learn ciphers or hide blades in their boots. But they're just as important. Maybe more. They're watchers. Carriers. Listeners. There's the candlemaker's apprentice in Moresby who always lights a third candle in the window when the docks are dangerous. There's the baker in Wycross who marks the loaves with a small cut, 1 for safe passage, 2 for caution, 3 for turn back. You learned that the hard way once. Bit into a 3-cut loaf, and ended up waiting in a hayloft for 8 hours while soldiers searched the tavern across the street. The Whisper network doesn't work fast. But it works everywhere. And it always begins the same way. A quiet nod. A repeated phrase. A pause where no pause should be. You might be walking through a village square when someone drops their glove, except it lands directly in front of your left foot. That's not an accident. That's a signal. You pick it up, hand it back, and feel the slip of paper inside. The message is never longer than a sentence. Avoid the southern gate. Meeting delayed. Rain expected. Trust the man with the copper pin. You don't ask who sent it. You don't ask how they knew you'd be there. That's not how this works. You move on. Quietly. Like you were never there. The network's strength is in its ordinariness. These people aren't spies or warriors. They're cooks, barbers, bookbinders, scribes. You once got a message from a girl selling apples. She handed you a bruised one and winked. It looked like a normal apple until you bit into it and found a thin strip of wax paper curled inside. It simply said, "Wait 3 days." So you did. 3 days later, the man you were supposed to follow arrived by river instead of road. If you hadn't waited, you'd have missed everything. Some members of the network don't even know what they're part of. They just follow instructions. They deliver bread to the wrong house on purpose. They swap 2 lanterns. They put salt in the ink pot instead of vinegar. They don't know why, they just do it. Someone higher up told them once, long ago. When the moment comes, do what you're told. And don't ask questions. And they agreed. Out of loyalty. Or curiosity. Or because, deep down, they like being part of something bigger, even if they never understood the whole picture. You've left messages with all kinds of people. A shoemaker's son who pretended not to notice when you placed a sealed letter in the back of his father's cart. A washerwoman who always folded shirts into symbols when there was danger nearby. An old man at the harbor who spat into the wind exactly once if the cargo was clean, and twice if it wasn't. You've never heard any of them speak your name. That's part of the deal. The less they know, the safer they are. The less you know about them, the better. That way, if anyone ever comes asking questions, you can truthfully say, "No, I don't remember who gave me that." And they don't remember you either. Just a quiet monk with muddy shoes and tired eyes. Sometimes the network sends you messages without knowing they did. A tavern door that sticks on purpose. A prayer said with the wrong words. A lantern left burning all night when it should have been out at curfew. You see these things. You're trained to. And sometimes the network is more direct. Like when someone taps your shoulder in a market square and says, "The sun rises early, but the moon watches longer." Which is nonsense to most people. But to you, it means someone is waiting by the well at dusk. So you go. You find a letter carved into the wood. A name you weren't supposed to know. A message that changes your next 3 weeks entirely. The Whisper Network doesn't sign its letters. It doesn't wear uniforms. It doesn't show loyalty with flags or banners or symbols. It shows loyalty in other ways. In risks. In silences. In the act of carrying something fragile and never dropping it. Because messages are fragile. Not just the physical ones, but the trust behind them. And this quiet web of strangers, scattered across towns and fields and alleys, they're the ones who keep the whole thing from falling apart. You once asked an older member, just once, "Why do you help?" She was a weaver. Bent over a loom. Didn't even look up. She said, "Because I like the idea that I'll never be famous for something important." You nodded. You understood. You'll never meet most of them again. Some of them may already be gone. Some may be watching you right now, pretending not to know who you are. And that's fine. That's how it works. Just whispers. Moving quietly through the cracks. Keeping everything in place. The rule of 3. There's a rule you live by. It's not carved into a wall. It's not part of any scripture. No one speaks it out loud. But if you've been trained like you have, you know it by heart. The rule of 3. Observe 3 times. Wait 3 beats. Move on the 3rd breath. Simple, right? But it's everything. You learned it early. Back when you were still new, still green, still trying to remember if you were supposed to bow before or after morning prayers. Someone handed you a note. Just those 3 lines, scribbled in charcoal on the back of a recipe for barley stew. You didn't get it at first. 3 what? 3 hours? 3 people? 3 goats? But over time, it sank in. Because the rule isn't just about numbers. It's about pace. About resisting that instinct to rush in. About making the space between thought and action wide enough for wisdom to fit inside. You start with observation. 3 times. Always. Let's say you're in a tavern. A man with a silver clasp on his cloak walks in. He's sweating, even though it's cold. You don't react. You sip your watered-down ale. You pretend to be thinking about soup. You watch him once, when he sits. Again, when he talks to the innkeeper and forgets to ask the price. And once more, when he checks the door behind him, even though no one's come in since he arrived. That's 3. Now you know something. You don't know everything, but enough. Enough to ask. Why is he nervous? Why is his clasp shaped like a fish when he claims to be from the mountains? Why did he order 2 drinks, but only 1 cup sits at the table? You wait. You hold still. Then comes the second part. Wait 3 beats. A beat isn't a second. It's not even a real unit of time. It's a feeling. You've learned to hear it in your head. Beat, beat, beat. The space between questions. The moment where your instincts try to jump ahead, and you hold them back with gentle hands. You've avoided so many mistakes that way. Once, you almost handed a scroll to the wrong man. Right cloak, right boots, right badge, but the wrong smell. His wax seal had no smoke on it, meaning he hadn't just come from a courier fire. You paused. 3 beats. He walked away. 10 minutes later, the real courier arrived. Smelling like cedar and burnt beeswax, just like he was supposed to. The 3rd part of the rule is the hardest. Move on the 3rd breath. Not the 1st. That one's always nervous. Not the 2nd. That one's full of doubt. But the 3rd, that's steady. You've learned to feel it when you're sitting in silence, heart pounding quietly under your robe. 1 breath, shallow, uncertain. 2 breaths, deeper, still heavy. 3 breaths, calm. That's when you stand. That's when you slip the note beneath the cushion. That's when you leave the kitchen early because something's not right. That's when you go. Not too early. Not too late. Just right. You once met someone who didn't follow the rule. A young messenger. Sharp eyes. Quick hands. She was good, too good. Moved on the 1st breath. Spoke too soon. Delivered a message before confirming the recipient's ring was turned the right direction. She vanished not long after. Maybe she ran. Maybe not. You think about her sometimes. When your fingers twitch to act fast. When your thoughts race ahead of your body. You think of her and take 3 breaths. And you stay. You've seen the rule work in other ways, too. At meals, when someone reaches for the bread 3 times, and only on the 3rd do they tuck a message underneath. At prayers, when Brother Elric chants the same line 3 extra times, a warning that someone is listening. Even in the crows. You swear they know the rule. They flap once when someone crosses the courtyard. Twice when someone suspicious arrives. 3 times when you need to move, now. You don't know if anyone else notices. But you do. Because you're paying attention. Because you've trained for this. Because this is what keeps you safe, when everything else feels unsteady. And over time, the rule becomes more than a habit. It becomes a rhythm, a heartbeat, a quiet melody that plays beneath the noise of the world. 3 breaths to calm you, 3 beats to think, 3 looks to truly see. It sounds small, almost silly, but it's saved you more times than you can count. And sometimes, when nothing dangerous is happening, no notes, no signals, no strange figures in the garden, you still follow it. Just to remember. You sit on a bench. You breathe. You watch the birds in the orchard. Once. Twice. 3 times. You listen to the wind tapping at the shutters. Once. Twice. 3 times. You don't move quickly. You wait. You think. And then you go. A visit from the outside world. It doesn't happen often. Visitors, that is. The monastery is too far from the nearest town, too tucked into the hills, too quiet for most people to care. Which is exactly the point. But every now and then, someone arrives. A writer. A merchant. A dusty traveler looking for shelter. And when they do, everything changes, just a little. This morning, you're sweeping the stone floor near the entrance hall when you hear hooves. Slow, steady, echoing on the frozen path outside. You don't rush to the window. That would look suspicious. Instead, you keep sweeping, listening. The gate creaks. Boots on gravel. The quiet jingle of a bit and bridle. You glance up. He's not dressed like a noble, but not quite like a farmer either. Dark cloak. Riding gloves. A bag slung over his shoulder. Brother Marcus meets him at the door. They speak for a moment. You can't hear the words, but the tone is calm. Casual. Too casual, actually. You sweep slower. The visitor steps inside. His eyes adjust quickly. He nods politely at Brother Marcus. Then again, more briefly at you. You nod back. And that's all. For now. Later, during midday prayers, he's there. Sitting at the back of the chapel, hands folded. Eyes closed, mostly. Except every so often, he peeks. Not at the altar. Not at the crucifix. At the rows of monks. Scanning faces. Looking for someone. You keep your expression steady. Your posture calm. You recite the lines you've said 100 times, your voice blending into the soft river of chants. Afterward, he lingers in the hallway, speaking quietly to Brother Thomas about some donation from the lowlands. You pass by slowly, not too close, not too fast. And that's when you hear it. Just one word. Whispered. Feather. You don't react. You don't stop walking. But inside, something clicks into place. He's part of it. Or at least connected. That word, feather, has meaning in your world. It's not a password, not exactly. More like a key that opens a door most people don't even know is there. Later, you find the pouch he leaves, tucked into the hollow of the courtyard statue. Same place messages sometimes appear during harvest season. You wait until twilight to open it. Inside, there's a scrap of parchment. A name. A time. A location. And a second, smaller scrap. You are being watched. Classic. Very dramatic. You fold both papers and burn them immediately in the little stove you keep hidden in the garden shed. The flame curls the edges. Turns secrets to ash. That night, the visitor joins supper. He sits beside Brother Elric, who starts talking about weather and grain stores like he's trying to win an award for most boring conversation. You say nothing. You chew your bread. You sip your broth. You pretend not to notice that the visitor's hands are steady, but his eyes are always watching the exits. After the meal, he speaks briefly with the abbot. Says he'll leave at first light. Says he thanks them for the warmth and prayers. Says all the right things. Then he slips outside. And you follow. At a distance. He walks toward the orchard, where the trees are bare and the moonlight turns branches into bones. You wait. And then, from behind one of the trees, he speaks without turning around. I came to deliver a name, but also a warning. His voice is low, not nervous, just tired. There's a change coming. Quiet for now. But not for long. You say nothing. You let him talk. He tells you what he knows. About rumors. About new eyes watching old places. About someone asking too many questions in a nearby village. Then he hands you a ring. Simple. Iron. Unmarked. If you see someone wearing this, do not speak. Not even a nod. You take it. He vanishes into the trees, silent as a shadow. No dramatic goodbye. No flourish. Just gone. The next morning, he's gone from the guest chambers. Bed folded neatly. No signs of food or mess. Just the faint scent of traveled dust and waxed leather. Brother Marcus says he left before dawn. Didn't want to disturb anyone. You nod. You return to the scriptorium and start copying the letter you were working on yesterday. Something about a saint who loved birds. Your quill squeaks as usual. But your mind is already elsewhere. Thinking about the name. About the warning. About the ring, now tucked inside a pouch beneath your robe. You glance out the window at the orchard. All seems quiet. But that's how it always starts. You breathe in. Hold it. Let it out. 3 breaths. Then you dip your quill and return to the words on the page. The test of shadows. It begins with a knock. Not the kind you'd expect. Not sharp. Not hurried. Just 3 soft taps on your chamber door, hours after curfew. You're already in bed, half asleep, listening to the wind move through the cracks in the stone. You sit up. You know what this is. You've heard stories. Quiet ones. Passed down in half whispers during kitchen duty or late night watch shifts. The test of shadows. No one ever tells you when it will happen. Or why. Or how many have failed. Just that, eventually it comes. You rise slowly. Robe on. Candle lit. The knock doesn't come again. You open the door. No one there. Just a folded scrap of parchment on the ground, held in place by a small, flat stone. You lift it. The message is short. South stairwell. Don't bring light. You blow out your candle and pocket the note. The hallway is quiet. Cold stone beneath your feet. You walk slowly, fingers brushing the wall as your eyes adjust. Down the hall. Past the chapel. Left at the cloister. Then the south stairwell. You know the one. It's the stair you're told not to use unless the main path is blocked. The steps are narrow. Twisting. Steep enough to make your knees ache by the second turn. You descend in darkness. Halfway down, you feel a breeze, cool and damp. The air changes. You're not inside anymore. You're below. At the bottom, there's a door. Open. Beyond it, silence. You step through. It's a room. Bare stone walls. No windows. 1 torch lit in the far corner, casting long shadows across the floor. 3 figures stand near the far wall, hoods low, faces lost in the flickering light. You say nothing. You wait. Finally, the middle figure speaks. Voice soft. Neutral. Do you know why you're here? You shake your head. Good, they say. That means you might be ready. You wait again. They step aside, and a 4th person enters, hooded, quiet, holding a small, sealed box. They place it on the table. Inside this box is something that can only be opened with truth. You wonder what that means. They don't explain. Instead, they ask you 3 questions. The first. When do you lie? Not. Have you lied? Not. Why? Just when. You pause. Then you answer. When silence would be more dangerous. The second question. What is your weapon? You don't touch the dagger hidden in your boot. You say simply, time. The third question. What do you fear? This one is harder. You think of swords, yes. Of fire, of betrayal, of getting caught. But deeper than that, there's something worse. So you say, being seen for the wrong thing. They nod. The box is pushed toward you. You reach out. There's no lock. No latch. Just a lid. You open it. Inside is a stone. Smooth. Black. Cold. It's shaped like a feather. You look up. They're watching you, unmoving. Then the one in the center says, "You may return to your chamber." That's it. No explanation. No congratulations. Just a quiet nod. You take the stone. Pocket it. Bow once. Then you leave. Back up the narrow stairs. Through the cold hall. Past the chapel. You return to your room. The candle is still out. The blanket still rumpled. The psalm still open on the shelf, as if nothing happened. You sit on the edge of the bed. You feel the weight of the stone in your hand. You still don't know what it means. Maybe you passed. Maybe there's nothing to pass. Maybe it was all a reminder that you are being watched. That the path you walk is narrow and slippery and dimly lit. Or maybe it was something else. A welcome. A warning. A way of saying, "You are one of us now." You lie back down. Pull the blanket over your shoulders. Close your eyes. The stone is still in your hand, cold against your skin. And in the dark, a thought drifts across your mind. How long had they been watching you? You don't know. But you're pretty sure they saw the real you. And that's enough. For now. A map in disguise. It comes during laundry duty. You're folding robes with Brother Edric, who hums a little tune that somehow manages to be both off-key and catchy. The sun filters through the high windows, warm and golden. Outside, the wind is chasing the last few leaves of autumn across the courtyard. You've just finished folding your fourth robe when you notice it. At the bottom of the laundry basket, tucked beneath a linen towel, a book. Not one of yours. Not part of the laundry. The binding is too clean. Too deliberate. And there's a tiny symbol carved into the spine, a feather inside a circle. You cough softly and pick it up like it's no big deal. Just a book. Just doing monk things. Edric doesn't notice. He's busy trying to remember the second verse of a hymn about goats. You carry the book back to your chamber. Close the door. Sit on the edge of your bed. The title is plain. Lives of the Saints, Volume 2. Which is a terrible disguise, honestly. No one in the monastery has ever willingly read Volume 1. You flip it open. At first, it seems normal. Dry text. Faded ink. A story about Saint Corvinus and his legendary ability to convert sinners by staring at them awkwardly. But then, halfway through, you find it. A page that doesn't match the rest. The paper is thicker. Smoother. And faintly smells of ink and smoke. You hold it up to the light. Something shimmers. Not ink. Wax. Pressed lightly into the page. Invisible unless the light hits just right. You squint. Turn it slowly. There are faint lines. Symbols. Letters. A map. Not a full one. Just a corner. A fragment. At the bottom, one phrase written in tiny Latin script. Only the quiet can follow the trail. Classic. You touch the page. It's warm, just slightly. Recently handled. Or maybe that's just your own fingers, heating it with anticipation. You study the markings. There's a bend in a river. A ruined tower. A star symbol near a tree. You've seen that tree. It's not far from here. Beyond the orchard. Past the old wall that nobody repairs anymore. There's a path no one walks, too overgrown and winding to bother with. But you remember it. You walked it once during herb gathering season and got stung by a wasp. That tree was the only bit of shade around, and under it, you found a smooth stone shaped like an egg. You still have it in your garden pouch. So this map is real. And it's pointing somewhere you already half know. You trace the lines with your finger, committing it to memory. There's no X, no clear destination. Just hints. And that phrase again. Only the quiet can follow the trail. You wonder what that means. Maybe the path can't be found by sound. Maybe footsteps matter. Breathing. Stillness. Or maybe it's more symbolic. Maybe it means you have to listen, not with ears, but with the kind of silence you carry in your mind. The kind of quiet that lets you hear what isn't being said. You close the book. Slide it under your mattress for now. You don't leave right away. That would be too obvious. Too hasty. Instead, you spend the rest of the day as usual. You copy part of a scroll. You sweep the cloister steps. You help Brother Elric find his missing sandal, which, for the record, was under his bed the whole time, as usual. Then, at dusk, when the bell tolls for evening prayer and everyone else files into the chapel, you slip away. Softly. Without a sound. The orchard is still. The sky is streaked with blue and fading gold. You walk carefully, steps slow and thoughtful. Past the last row of trees. Past the crumbled wall. Into the part of the forest that hums like it remembers things. You find the path. Narrow. Hidden beneath old leaves and twisted vines. And yes, there's that tree. Broad. Heavy-branched. Silent in a way that feels intentional. You pause there. Not sure what you're waiting for. Then you hear it. A whisper. Not words. Just whine through the branches. But it sounds curious. Like something is watching. You step closer to the tree and place your hand on the bark. And underneath your fingers, you feel it. A groove. Not deep. Not visible from a distance. You run your thumb along it. It's a mark. A shape. A small circle. Inside it, the faint lines of a feather. Just like the spine of the book. You smile, just a little. Then you notice a stone at the base of the trunk. You crouch down. Lift it carefully. Underneath, a folded piece of parchment. No seal. No name. You unfold it. A sketch. The rest of the map. You don't follow it tonight. It's too dark. And you're not in a rush. Maps like this aren't meant to be chased in a hurry. They're meant to be understood. So you tuck it away. Replace the stone. Whisper a thank you to whoever left it. Then you turn back toward the monastery. And for the first time in weeks, you feel something. Light. Not excited exactly. Just ready. The quiet trail is waiting. And you'll follow it. In your own time. Step by step. Like always. The disappearing brother. It starts with an empty bench at morning prayers. Brother Harwin always sits in the same place. Third row from the front. Right side. Just behind Brother Osric, who has a cough that sounds like a goat with a grudge. But today, that spot is empty. You don't say anything. No one does. You just keep chanting, even as your eyes flick over to the empty space. Again and again. Like maybe if you blink slowly enough, he'll appear. He doesn't. After prayers, people begin to whisper. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just the quiet kind of concern that's almost curiosity. He might be in the infirmary, someone says. Maybe he overslept, says someone else, even though no one oversleeps around here. Not unless they're unconscious or extremely dead. You don't ask questions. You just go about your morning. You eat your crusty bread. You help carry firewood. You recite from the Book of Hours. But in the back of your mind, there's a little wrinkle. A tug. Brother Harwin isn't just some monk. He's quiet. Polite. Always exactly where he's supposed to be. Never late. Never lost. And now he's gone. That afternoon you go by his chamber. The door is closed. You knock. No answer. You knock again, softer. Still nothing. You try the handle. Unlocked. Inside it's tidy. Too tidy. The bed's been made. Blanket folded sharp. Candle unburned. Shelf perfectly arranged. But one thing is off. His boots are gone. Not the old ones he wears inside. The travel ones. The ones with the thick soles and reinforced laces. The ones no monk wears unless they're going somewhere they're not supposed to. You scan the room slowly. A hairbrush. a cup, a rolled up wool scarf. His psalter closed, but the bookmark is missing. Then you see it. On the windowsill. A feather. Not from a quill. Not decorative. Just a regular, gray bird feather. Except it's been cut. Clean across the shaft. A signal. You don't touch it. You leave everything exactly as it is and close the door. At dinner, Brother Elric asks if anyone's seen Harwin. The abbot shakes his head. He was feeling unwell, I believe. He's resting. No one questions it. But you notice the abbot doesn't look at anyone when he says it. He keeps his eyes on his bowl, like the soup has suddenly become very important. You say nothing. You eat your bread. Drink your water. And wait. That night a knock. Same 3 soft taps on your door. You open it. This time, there's no one outside. Just a piece of folded parchment. No rock this time. Just sitting there. You pick it up. 1 line. Harwin followed the map. Do not follow him. Classic. Naturally, that makes you want to follow him even more. But you don't. Not yet. Instead, you slip out the back, past the cloister, through the old gate near the orchard. You move slowly, soundlessly, your footsteps parting the leaves like whispers. You return to the tree where you found the rest of the map. The marker's gone. The little circle carved in the bark? Scratched out. The hiding stone? Missing. Whoever sent Harwin out there doesn't want you finding him. Or maybe Harwin doesn't want to be found. You crouch near the tree. Rest your hand on the ground. Still warm from the day's sun. You close your eyes and breathe. 1, 2, 3. Then you listen. And wait. Back in your room, you open your copy of Lives of the Saints, Volume 2 again. This time, the page with the map has been torn out. Gone without a trace. You sit back slowly. Someone's cleaning up. You lie down. Think of Harwin. His soft voice. His careful handwriting. The way he always smelled faintly of ink and time. He wasn't made for field work. But maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why they chose him. Maybe he knew something. Or maybe he just got tired of silence. You stare at the ceiling. Count the cracks in the stone above your bed. You wonder how far he's gone. If he's scared. If he regrets it. If he's even alive. You don't know. All you know is, people don't just disappear around here. Not without someone letting them go. Or sending them. You close your eyes. Try not to picture him walking alone, map in hand, stepping into a part of the world that was never meant to be mapped at all. A letter with no ink. It shows up the next morning. Tucked between the pages of your psalter. You're not even surprised anymore. You were sitting in the chapel, pretending to read one of the slower psalms. The ones about patience and dust and humility. The usual monk stuff. But as you turned the page, there it was. A piece of parchment. Thinner than usual. Folded once, neatly. Not sealed. No marks. No names. You unfold it. There's nothing on it. No message. No drawing. No ink. Just paper. You tilt it toward the candlelight. Squint. Turn it sideways. Flip it over. Still blank. But it isn't blank. You know better than that. This is a message. Just not one written in ink. You've seen this trick before. From the older members of the order. From the ones who speak only when absolutely necessary. The ones who taught you that silence can say things words never could. This is a letter. You just have to read it differently. You run your fingers across the page. There, on the surface, you feel it. Slight indentations. Raised lines. Something's been pressed into the paper. Not written. Etched. You tilt it again, this time toward the window. And that's when you see it. Faint outlines. Like a blind map. A handprint. Open palm. Fingers slightly spread. Pressed into the parchment, just hard enough to mark it, not enough to tear. And in the center of the palm, where the lifelines cross, is a tiny dot. That's it. That's the message? You've heard stories about the hand signal. It means a few different things depending on who sent it. But most commonly it means alive, safe, watching. You don't know who sent it. Could be Harwin. Could be someone else entirely. Someone watching you watching him. But it doesn't really matter. Because the point isn't the name. It's the signal. The dot in the center of the hand. Which means, not finished. Whatever happened out there, whatever path Harwin took, it's still going. You fold the paper and place it back in your psalter. Then you return it to your shelf, between the comb and the cup. Like nothing happened. Later, during your walk through the garden, you notice something strange. Someone has moved the bench. It's not obvious, but the legs are half a hand's width to the left. Just enough to cast a different shadow at dawn. A signal. You check beneath the bench. Nothing. But that's the point. The message isn't under it. It is the bench. Its placement. Someone's reminding you. We're still here. Still watching. Still connected. You sit down for a while. Pretend to enjoy the breeze. Across the way, a crow lands on the low wall. It cocks its head at you. You nod once. It flaps its wings. Once. Twice. Then gone. That night, you find yourself back at the window, staring into the trees, not looking for anything in particular, just aware. You think about Harwin, about the test of shadows, the cut feather, the map you memorized and lost. You think about all the names you've been given, all the names you've never learned. You think about the letter with no ink, and you realize something. Maybe it wasn't meant for reading. Maybe it was meant for feeling. The texture, the shape, the presence of something unseen. Like so much in your world. Like the work you do, the words you never say. The secrets that walk beside you like shadows at dawn. You lie in bed. The candle burns low. Outside, the wind rustles the orchard trees. Somewhere, a bell chimes. You breathe. In. Out. Again. 3 breaths. And just before your eyes close, you think of the message one last time. The open hand. The dot. The silence. You smile, barely. Because in your world, that's as loud as anyone ever says. You're not alone. And that's enough.